Hi, my name is Dr. John Oluwole. I'm a specialist neurologist. I created this channel, Brain Gist, to educate people about the brain and its disorders. Today, I'll be talking to you about the link between epilepsy and driving restrictions. So before going ahead, I'd like to welcome those of you who might be watching the channel for the very first time. And for those of you who've been watching, I'd like to welcome you once again and thank you for watching all the time and for all of your support. So you might be wondering, where lies the link between epilepsy and driving? And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. If you imagine, for example, someone behind the wheels driving on the road and the person suddenly loses consciousness, you can only imagine what's going to happen next. So the car could potentially run into other vehicles. If it happens at an intersection where children are crossing the road, you can imagine what could potentially happen. So there could be loss of lives, there could be damage to cars, there could be harm to other people and even to the driver themselves. And that's why it's important to have this conversation. And because of the fact that a lot of times neurologists and other doctors are very, very busy and there is time constraint in the clinics, it's not unusual for patients who have epilepsy to go through, doctors and not yet have the opportunity to have this discussion about driving restriction and epilepsy. So that's why I'm trying to fill this gap by raising this very essential thing. So many developed countries in the world have got strict guidelines about, who's allowed to drive and who's not allowed to drive if they've got a seizure or if they've got a history of epilepsy. But some other countries do not have these guidelines, and it behoves the clinicians to, bring up this conversation and, kind of educate their patients about the need to not drive and all of that. So for example, in UK, so if one is known to have epilepsy, in other words, they've had at least 2 seizures in the past, such individuals are not allowed to drive until they have been free of seizures on treatment for at least about 12 months. And if that's their first seizure, then the restriction is usually about 6 months until they've not had any further seizures. For 6 months, they're not allowed to drive. So I know in some other countries it's slightly different. I know in America, for example, it can be shorter, probably up to 3 months in some states. But as a general rule of thumb, what practice I have adopted is to kind of tell my patients to not drive until their seizures are fully controlled for at least 6 months, in which case they haven't had any seizures at all for 6 months. I know it's a difficult subject because we're dealing with people with epilepsy who have all sorts of stigmas, who are, suffering from all sorts of discrimination, and they are handicapped in so many ways because some of them cannot find jobs, some of them cannot get partners to get married to. So many social problems, and stopping such people from driving probably adds to the burden of that's already up on them. But nevertheless, it's an important subject to discuss. It's an important issue in order to ensure safety of lives and ensure safety of everyone. So that's why restrictions of this nature are very important. Now the other thing is it's not a blanket restriction, because sometimes you have some people who've got epilepsy, yet all of their seizures over a long period of time have always occurred in the night and never in the daytime. For such people, perhaps doctors might consider probably, that they may not need restrictions during the daytime, or for those who have seizures in which they don't lose consciousness, and they're not impaired during the seizures, and they're able to drive. So perhaps those people may not need to be restricted from driving. So it's a complex process, but it's important to bring up this conversation in case your doctor hasn't discussed that with you. It's important for you to raise that conversation with your doctor. And then the other part of it is in many associations or professional associations do not really mandate doctors to report patients with epilepsy to the driving authorities. It's supposed to be the responsibility of the doctor. The doctor is just supposed to discuss with the patient, and it behoves the patient to really report themselves to the driving authorities, who will then withdraw their licenses. So it's not actually, I know some states probably in some countries make it mandatory for the doctors to report, but generally speaking, in many countries, the doctors are not mandated or required to report. It's the patient's responsibility to do the reporting of themselves and then get the driving license withdrawn. So all the doctor has to do is to bring up a conversation and encourage the patient to discuss. So that's all I thought I would want to discuss today, to bring up this awareness to the public. And let's see what people think. You can respond in the comment section. Let's see, do you agree or do not agree that people's licenses should be withdrawn? And what are your experiences if you're an epileptic patient? Has your doctor discussed this with you, or has your license been restored, and all of that? I'd like to hear what you guys think. So thank you once again for watching today. I'd like you to please subscribe, turn your notification, share the video, give it a thumbs up, and then I'll see you in my next video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.